With the release of Marvel Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4 and its many Easter eggs to the larger Marvel universe, it's hard not to imagine how characters with connections to Spider-Man would play in a game like Spider-Man, or even how they would play if they made it as DLC characters. So just for fun, I'm going to throw together some concepts on how I think some of Spider-Man's closest friends from the extended Marvel Universe would play in his game, starting with Daredevil. Now, I'm definitely not saying these characters will become playable in any way. Once again, this is just a fun way to keep hype alive while I'm anxiously waiting for DLC to drop for this game. Mild spoilers for the first act of this game, meaning the tutorial level, are ahead. You've been officially disclaimed, so let's get started with the man without fear, Daredevil. In the first level of the campaign, Spider-Man finally locks away the Kingpin for good, or at least he thinks. Obviously, the Kingpin isn't just going to sit in prison and quietly serve his sentence. The story will see Kingpin's men try to break him out of prison and bring him to an undisclosed location in the city. Spider-Man, of course, is going to try and stop this breakout, but would be caught off guard by three of Kingpin's top goons. Everybody's favorite lawyer would drop on the scene a couple of minutes later to see Spider-Man failed and is unconscious at the feet of Fancy Dan, Ox, and Montana, the Kingpins Enforcers. The first fight would be a three-man boss fight behind the wheels of Daredevil. Of course, it wouldn't be too hard. After all, this is the introduction to someone who isn't Spider-Man. It's going to be really jarring at first. Ox would be a tougher version of one of the larger thugs, a lot like Kingpin is. Fancy Dan would be one of the thugs with pistols, but with two, and Montana would perform as a stronger whipped enemy. Daredevil would pick off the three characters and help Spider-Man come to his feet. They would agree to work together and stop their common foe until he's brought back to justice. For some further stakes in the plot, the Enforcers will tell the two that Kingpin is leaving the city in only 6 hours. They only have 6 hours to stop Kingpin, or he's out of their jurisdiction for good. In order to stop Kingpin in time, the heroes are going to need any information they can muster. This immediately sends them to Hammerhead, who everybody knows is one of Kingpin's biggest rivals in the underworld. Hammerhead will name two assassins that Kingpin has been extremely fond of in the past and is likely to go to for help: Typhoid Mary and Bullseye. Players will track down Typhoid Mary and have a boss battle against the pyrokinetic and telekinetic mutant before finding out Bullseye is with Kingpin as a final line of defense against New York superheroes. Daredevil and Spider-Man will follow Mary's intel to Kingpin's private jet, where Daredevil and Spider-Man have a final duel with Kingpin and Bullseye on the plane. The pair land the plane safely, return the criminals to prison, and go their separate ways. Now, I'm not exactly the best at concocting an interesting storyline, but I do think this would be a fun and tense mini-campaign for the players to experience. I feel like it's worth mentioning as well that Hammerhead should probably be a boss fight that ends with the two heroes letting him go in exchange for the information. While sure, this is arguable that it's against character for Daredevil and Spider-Man to let him go in the first place, it's not like they find Hammerhead doing anything illegal in this campaign. If they did take him in, they'd have nothing to lock him away with. It's going to be one of those, the enemy of my enemy is going to be my friend, because we can't lock away this enemy too. Daredevil would honestly play pretty similarly to Spider-Man, both characters being acrobatic fighters with access to swinging and zipping for traversal. While Spider-Man obviously uses his webs, Daredevil would use one of his billy clubs with a grappling hook and cable mechanism to aid in his traversal and fighting. The key difference is that Daredevil throws more punches and would be much more of a brawler, while Spider-Man is a wrestler. He uses a lot of grappling moves in his fighting, like the Hurricane Rana. Daredevil would still be able to use the triangle button to zip to enemies or pull them in. However, I don't see him swinging enemies in circles like Spider-Man can, because he's just not as strong as Spider-Man. Instead, I'm thinking more of a grappling hook from an Arkham game situation where he brings enemies closer for a follow-up attack. As for his Gadget Wheel, I think 5 gadgets is more than enough for a DLC character. I don't believe Daredevil uses these in a lot of canon material, but he does use them in a ton of video games. His bolas would be the equivalent of Spider-Man's webs, where Daredevil can throw them to immobilize his enemies. Enemies near poles or on the ground automatically become incapacitated and unable to fight anymore, a lot like how Spider-Man can web people to walls and to the ground. He could equip this Billy Club throw, where the gadget button throws a Billy Club that bounces to 2 enemies before going back to Murdock. It would do a decent amount of damage and stun enemies for 1 second. It's extremely simple, but I feel it's important that Daredevil has this ability in some form in every single video game that he's in. This gadget, I don't think Matt Murdock has ever used in the comic books. I can't recall a time when Daredevil shoots someone with ninja blinding powder. I'm sure maybe he's done something similar at some point, but as far as I know, he hasn't done it. To me, this is the most logical gadget for him to have, as he doesn't need to see physically, but other people kind of do. I don't see why one of his Billy Clubs can't just spray it out at a small group of enemies. If Spider-Man can get new gadgets exclusively for this game, why can't Daredevil? And before you say it, no, it's not ridiculous that his Billy Clubs would be able to pack so many surprises in them. You're going to have to hear me out for this one, but yeah, it does exist. On a personal level, I love how goofy Daredevil's Billy Club can get. My favorite incarnation of this club is the one where Daredevil turns it into a rifle. Now, I'm not saying Daredevil should gun thugs down, but I would love for him to shoot tranquilizer darts at least out of it at enemies to disorient them, or alternatively, only having one shot with it, but it instantly knocks out an opponent. Yep, I'm going with another campy Daredevil gadget. I'm talking about his umbrella shield. Daredevil would be able to hold the right bumper and block or outright deflect any projectile fired at him for a limited amount of time as a gadget. Enemies would take damage equivalent to what they would take if they were shot by their teammates, which can happen. Missiles wouldn't explode and just perform like they do when Spider-Man throws them. I mean, come on. You have to include the shield. It's easily the funniest gadget he's ever had in the comics. How does the shield fit in his club? I'm not even going to get into it, but it has to be in this game somewhere. Now, I do want to talk about the Traversal Daredevil would have in a little bit more detail. Spider-Man is a game built on movement and fluidity, and if another character were to be introduced, they would have to be fun to explore New York City with. You can't put somebody like Iron Fist or Luke Cage in this game because they take the subway everywhere. There's no movement options for them. It'd suck, it'd be boring, it'd be Subway Simulator, and we don't want that. We want to whiz through New York City in fun and creative ways. Luckily, as I mentioned earlier, Daredevil does share the ability to zip and swing, but with a little less range and the inability to stick on walls. However, I still think Daredevil would be able to parkour extremely well. If he has enough speed, there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to run a short distance on walls. If he needs to get on top of a building, he can just grapple to the top of it. And yes, he'd be able to launch himself like Spider-Man can. But he doesn't get Spider-Man's upgraded launch because Daredevil doesn't have super strength. So basically, Daredevil would just be a Spider-Man with a major focus on parkour and quick short grapples, as well as quick short swings. Of course, Daredevil needs something to do while he explores the city, like 25 collectible envelopes, similar to Spider-Man's backpacks, as well as exclusive crimes and bases. He'd have 5 Kingpin thug crimes and 5 Hammerhead thug crimes for every area, as well as 10 total bases between the entire map. Once again, 5 for Kingpin and 5 for Hammerhead. The crimes would be limited to stealth crimes, burglaries, kidnappings, shootouts, and basically everything excluding car chases. Daredevil doesn't have the super strength necessary to stop a car with his body. He'd just, splat. Of course, you can't have a superhero game without unlockable costumes and some customization. Daredevil's default appearance would be an Insomniac take on the classic red tights. I would imagine it'd look more like a Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 style of Daredevil, because that game also had a focus on giving tights practical designs. Daredevil would not be able to get suit abilities for every costume. He'd only have 3 to choose from, as well as 6 suit mods. You might say, Nosy, that's fucking dumb. Why can't he have one for all 12 suits you're giving him? Well, he's a bonus character. I don't think he'd have anywhere near the options Spider-Man does in terms of customization. This is Marvel's Spider-Man, not Marvel's Daredevil. His abilities would be as follows. Super Senses, Daredevil permanently marks every enemy as red, allowing him to keep track of them at all times. Baton Whip, Daredevil extends his billy club using the cable and swings it around him multiple times. All surrounding enemies take moderate damage and are knocked onto the ground. 3. Man Without Fear. Daredevil gains focus at an accelerated rate and generates it over time. As for suit mods, they will be as follows. Daredevil takes less melee damage. Daredevil takes less bullet damage. Daredevil does more damage with all billy club attacks. Daredevil generates slightly more focus. And Daredevil gets an additional 25 HP, as well as finally, all of Daredevil's gadgets gain 1 additional use. I really like this one. I think it's OP, but I still really like it. I think it's super handy. And of course, we finally get to the best part, what costumes I want Daredevil to get. The first would obviously be the red classic tights. The second would be the yellow classic tights. The third would be the Man Without Fear / Mass Vigilante. I think they're pretty interchangeable. The fourth is 2099. The fifth is Earth X Daredevil. The sixth is all new, all different. That juicy black and red. I love it so much. The seventh is Netflix's Daredevil, but not the one that looks like a pug from the first season, but the newer one. I like that look a lot more. Eighth is Shadowland, which has way less red than the all-new, all-different suit. It's basically all black from head to toe except for the D's and the eyes. 9 is Armored Daredevil. Everybody loves this one. 10 is Secret War. This is another good one. 11 is Noir Daredevil, the Daredevil equivalent of Spider-Man wearing normal clothes but also a mask. And finally, we can't have Daredevil costumes without that leathery 2003 movie suit, because of course we need this suit. It's his best one. It's iconic. Who didn't love that movie? Seriously. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new here and you really liked this video, please hit that subscribe button and hit that bell so you're notified when future videos like the rest of the series come out. The next video is Deadpool. You cannot miss it. I really think you guys should stick around. Make sure you like and comment to support your favorite nose. It really does help, and I would love you for it. In the description down below, you'll find 2 links, one for my Twitter and one for my Discord. I highly recommend you join the Discord. You get updates on what future videos will cover, updates on when uploads would drop, a community where you're free to meme with and discuss nerdy shit with, and a direct way to talk to me or contact me. There are even channels where you guys can make your own character concepts and drop video ideas for a chance for me to actually make the video and credit you for the idea. With that mouthful of an advertisement done with, I'll just see you guys in the next video.